Hi, and thanks for joining us here at MENA 2021. My name is Vonk. I'm the head of cyber intelligence at Silensec, and I'll be expanding further on what we just heard from Almerindo Graziano. So, just as a quick recap, CyberRanges is a provider of cyber range technology, and we are one of the few companies in the world that provide this. We provide our cyber range in three different ways: hosted, on-premise, and in a portable format which consists of 3 custom laptops that we use to bring the cyber range to you. Now, before we go any further, I think it's important to know what a cyber range is, to know what an attack simulation is, and finally, to know what it means to be able to simulate attacks in a cyber range. Let's break things down to simplify each component of this topic to its base element and start discussing what attack simulations are, the various possible types, and what they're used for. So as you may gather by its name alone, an attack simulation is just that. It's a simulation of any specific type of attack. There are many different companies providing attack simulation tools that simulate either a specific method or behavior of a known threat actor or APT. Some will simulate attacks on your network, while others will try to steal credentials and attempt to gain privilege escalation in order to perform further attacks and gain lateral movement. Each one of these different tools cater to the different needs we have today. Then there are breach and attack simulation technologies, the likes of Attack IQ or Simulate. These tools are used to audit and verify your security posture. These are used to continually test a company's security and validate that a security control and the response measures in place are able to detect and handle events that may occur. So then, if an attack simulation tool provides us with these benefits, what is a cyber range used for? And why would you run an attack simulation on a cyber range? A cyber range will allow you to emulate entire infrastructure environments and then run attack simulations on these environments. Why is this important? Well, this is the best way to train your staff with real-life scenarios, allowing them to experience what a real attack would be like and what they would have to do to defend against it. A next-generation cyber range goes beyond that and allows you to simulate much more than just an attack. Imagine having your entire infrastructure mapped out with the various tools and security controls in place that you would normally use within your company, and then being able to have your SOC team behind the wheel of a selected scenario and see how they would handle it. It'd be possible to score each user, create a report on each scenario, and the response taken, which is excellent for competency management. There's also something very important I would like to highlight. When you run a scenario on a cyber range, the attacks that are performed are not variations of safe code, but real attacks that can cripple your infrastructure with live munition, such as sample malware, ransomware, etc. That's why it's the ultimate way of actually learning by having this done and performed on an environment that is 100% safe, since all of the machines that are being orchestrated and emulated is done within a cyber range. And therefore, when you're actually running these scenarios, you're not doing it on your production systems, but you're doing it in an environment that's safe and can be rebooted fresh from scratch on a click of a button. Orchestration is at the heart of the next generation cyber range. It gives you the freedom of creativity when designing your attack simulations. Anything from scheduling events to user activity, payload deployments, spear phishing attacks, the degradation of a network, whatever you can think of could be created and set into different workflows that not only run when scheduled, but can also pass on variable outputs as input for the following command or workflow. Think of, for an example, an nmap scan that then feeds the output to the next command in the flow. In the following slide, I'd like to sketch out some more of the capabilities that our cyber range has to offer. I mentioned earlier that we can orchestrate virtually anything you can think of, and in terms of attack simulation, on this slide there's a sample list of attacks that we can use to create our scenarios. So anything from scanning a network, data exfiltration, ransomware attacks, to denial of service. The idea here is to give you the most realistic experience in a safe environment of how these cyber attacks are done and teach you what is needed to mitigate against them. In this specific slide, you can see that we can simulate traffic from various different sources, generate scripted attacks using workflows, and give you access to the entire infrastructure. You can also see that we have something called Injector Engine. This is our way of injecting attacks into the emulated environment. It is in essence a library of tools that is used by red teams, pen testers, and hackers. We can use any one of these tools and pass commands that run in real time. Of course, if you want to up the ante, You can have a real red team perform attacks for you during your exercise against your SOC team, so that you have a red team exercise and a blue team exercise going on at the same time in a shared environment. Essentially, what we're trying to say here is that you're not limited to anything. If you wish to have a red team exercise, blue team, or purple team, it's all possible. Our cyber range makes it easy to work towards a standard or a framework like the Tiber EU framework, where you mimic the tactics, techniques, and procedures of real life attackers. We endeavor to bring you real life scenarios based on cyber threat intelligence of ongoing campaigns on the threat intelligence landscape. By the way, when I say that we can give you access to the entire infrastructure for a cyber range exercise, I do mean that the environment that we will be using for the drill is a duplicate of your own environment that you have at your company. The infrastructure can be set up to mimic your environment to make it identical to the physical thing, and you then can have access to go ahead and configure it so that it is an identical copy in terms of setup. I mentioned earlier that we can simulate traffic from various sources. As such, that gives us the ability to simulate user activity and attacks from sources globally and give you the experience of a real life event, as if it were being performed by a global APT. Okay, so I think that a lot of you probably are wondering, how does this actually work? And I'd be more than happy to show you. So let's take a look at how these things run. All right, so here I've loaded an incident response scenario in our cyber range. Let's switch over to the server view and load QRadar. By the way, this is a real instance of QRadar that's being run in the cyber range attack simulation so that we can collect and analyze events as they happen. Let's take a look at a different attack simulation. It's as simple as clicking a button. And again, let's load up the server view and load Archime, or if some of you might know it from the past as Moloch. It's an open source index packet and search tool. Again, this is an instance of this tool running on another infrastructure on the cyber range, and we can see real data that's been captured for us to analyze. So it's relatively easy to select any of the packets collected and drill down for more information for our investigation. What about if we want to run another tool, say Wazoo? It's as simple as going back to the server view, selecting it, and launching the web interface. Here, we can also monitor real-time security events. Well, what about if we want to run OS query? Same thing again, we go back, select it, and launch it. And then we can get some more visibility on our endpoints. Okay, now let's take a look at a different scenario and have a look at our injection library. Here you can see a list of different scenario flows and individual injections. It would be as easy as dragging and dropping any one of these attacks to the palette and have them run. So we could, if we wanted to, run, say, a brute force attack, privilege escalation, clear system logs, maybe generic nmap scans, botnet, or generate traffic by a torrent download. We could also, if we wanted to, run SQL map and go in there. This is a predefined attack, and we're just going to change one thing in here. We're going to go in and change the execution. So this basically means how many times it's going to run. So we change it from 1 to 10, save it, click Start. And what that does, it actually updates not only this running scenario, but anything else that's using that flow. Let's go back to a different injection, and this time we're going to go to a selection. Let's just choose, some brute forcing and run an exploit on whatever we find there. So we're going to click Start on there, start on another one. And maybe we'd like to generate some traffic. So we're going to choose to run some traffic from Microsoft Exchange. For email retrieval, we're going to change the destination IP address. So it's within the same network, let's say, just to make it more realistic. And then we're going to start, save and start it. What else could we do? Oh, what about we generate some scanning activity? Yeah, let's do that. Let's find it. There we go. Open it up. What we're going to do now for the IP address, we're actually going to import IPs from um, a non-malicious list from Tor. So these are IP addresses from a pool that basically will be selected randomly each time that this is run. We're going to change the frequency again, so from 1 execution to, let's say, 10, and we're going to add this over 10 sessions, and the delay between each one of these is going to be 60 seconds, so once a minute. We're going to, again, save and run. Let's take a look at a different one here, a different scenario. So let's just go ahead and inject an entire workflow for a business email compromised from the library. Really, what we're trying to say here is that injecting any attack simulation from the library into an ongoing cyber drill is as easy as clicking on a button. And of course, anything that we inject in here is captured for the participants so that they can analyze it later. So if we were to click on refresh to look at our tools, we can actually see events that have happened over a certain amount of time. We can go ahead and let's say change the time that we're looking up. So not from 50 minutes ago, but let's say from an hour ago. We click on update, and then you'll see that the list here will be updated and we'll have new events. We can then, if we wanted to, select any one of these, drill down, and then we can take a look at what's actually ongoing. So this is what's been captured over that specific period of time. What we haven't discussed so far is how we gamify the entire environment. What does that mean? Well, you can set up scenarios to actually allow users to compete against each other, where you have the competition element. So you can either have a multiplayer versus a single player scenario. That also means, of course, is that whenever we run these scenarios on the cyber range, we can actually choose to give every single user an individual set for themselves where nothing is being interfered by another user, or we can give them a melee scenario where essentially they're sharing the same environment and they can actually choose to attack each other or to change things on the go. And to top that off, with anything else, each individual can actually belong to a team or be let's say, an individual on their own and just be a rogue agent. And therefore, also the scoring and assessment will reflect that as well. So, to wrap things up, let's just have a quick recap on what we've discussed so far. We've gone over attack simulation tools, what they are, what they can be used for. We have a small list here of a couple of ones that we decided to mention, and by no means are these the only ones out there. There is a lot more, each one doing their entire own thing. We've also discussed about advantages of using attack simulations on a cyber range, and that these can be provided within the cyber range when it's a next generation cyber range. What we'd also like to conclude with here as well is that just remember that with attack simulations, you're actually using those tools to validate your security controls and check and see how fast your responses are and therefore build up on that. However, if you want to have a full experience for each user and actually increase the ability of your SOC team or your staff members, that can be done much easier with the cyber range where you have an entire emulation of your actual environment and infrastructure where attacks can be conducted. And therefore, not only can you basically run real life scenarios that are actually being attacked on each individual infrastructure, you can even see it done in real time for each user and use the security controls and tools that you're used to with every day to actually check and see what's going on. So that's it for me, folks. Thanks for joining us here at MENA 2021. If you have any questions, we're around here to answer it. Thank you. Bye bye.